the terminal and the password doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
don't know.
I'll set all that up. Don't worry about that for now. Let me just make sure it's recording. Other than that, how's the homework coming along? Both with the Pokemon project and
I still need some time with the Pokemon one.
that's fine. But I figured
Yeah,
it's a
Pokemon was a little hard.
that's fine. It's a tough project, but I'm hoping today we can get some questions out of the way. Like I don't want you to struggle through it without making any headway. Like, do you feel like you've managed to make any progress since last week?
No, I kind of spent
I
my
made,
QA one.
How about everyone else?
I made some progress.
Yeah. Ish.
I made some progress, but not that much.
I was able to do it.
You finished it completely?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see how it runs in your thing. Curious.
All right. You want me to share my screen?
Yeah. Go ahead. Don't show too much of your code, but let's just see it run.
Okay. Okay. You want me to just run it?
What is prowess? I'm just curious.
Prowess is just the what determines the like how much points the the person who defeated that gets, like because prowess means like their skill level.
Yeah. Okay.
So if it's like a Charizard, it has more.
Oh, so you're saying like if Charmander beats, if
If like a Bulbasaur beats Charizard, right, and then like the prowess variable has like 20 in it,
right,
for Charizard, then 20 experience points gets added to Bulbasaur's.
I got you.
Thingamajig. I don't know if that's how you wanted us to do it.
No, I wanted you to be creative with it. Like if you felt,
okay.
Yeah, I have no specific requirements as long as the console shows what I wanted. Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing I didn't do is like I didn't know if you wanted me to do it, but if I run it, like it's just Charmander and Bulbasaur. I didn't actually give it a distinction. So let me show you the evolve because I kind of tweaked it so that one battle doesn't evolve them. Like, okay, so like this right here is like, so I put this as 5, but like if I put it at 25 for both of these, then it should evolve in the next battle. Okay, so you see how Charmander won here?
Yeah.
And then by the next battle, it was Charmeleon that was fighting.
Okay.
And then it tells you which team won at the end.
That's good. Let me read the console for a bit.
Okay. So yeah, it's very confusing because, again, I didn't write anything to distinguish between the Charmander on Team 1 and the Charmander on Team 2. So
yeah, I guess. I mean, this is good, but to read it, I'll need like, just so the console is clear, make it like a distinct team, like Charmander versus Squirtle or something.
What do you mean?
Like yeah, just have like a few different Pokemon. It shouldn't be hard because you got all the logic in. Just so we could see it in action. But yeah, this is good. The only thing is make one console message for when they evolve. That's it. That should be an easy fix.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is good. Really good.
All right.
Looking forward to see it next week. But I expect the same from Berman Fa. Like I know this is hard, but yeah. So, how about all right? So if you guys didn't make any headway with Pokemon, how about the automation project?
Yeah, I did mine.
Any did you hit any snags there?
Except for like the last part where the actual logic is, I didn't like put that in the base page because I don't know if like you're
Show me what you mean. Show your screen.
Yeah. So for my sort test, I obviously added the login. I made a pick option for the filter button, and I put in the base page and everything. Over here. But like I wasn't sure if I was supposed to put all of this as a as a method in the base page. So I kind of left it in here.
You wanna repeat that one more time? I'm not sure what you're getting at. Show me your base page and sort test side by side.
Oh. I put it aside.
You'll get used to it. Just yeah, like that right there. Okay, and now you could just lower the console a little. Yeah. All right. What was the question again?
Okay, so you know how in like the login, like we simplified it for the user or like to read the code, like the readability.
Right.
Oh, like login and put username.
Yeah.
I was gonna do that for the second portion, which is the filter button, seeing the if the sorting was actually correct. But all this logic, am I just supposed to shove it into the base page? I was doing that.
No,
but like I
no.
stopped.
Okay, so let's dial back a bit. Scroll up to your base page.
Hold up.
So, okay, so the sort test is different. You see where we have base page, right? Do you guys, Berm and Ish, do you see what Fa is asking?
Yeah.
How would you?
The answer is no.
Yeah, how would you respond to what Fa's? In your own words, how would you? Reply to Fa to his question.
You wouldn't put it in the base page.
Like, is this supposed to show any logic? Like the actual like
What do you ask? Like the whole function, like test A to Z, should be base page? Is that what you're asking?
No. You see how this?
All the repetitive stuff. I guess
You don't really see the logic at all. Like it just says input username. You don't see the code behind it. You get what I'm saying? But for this, like I show all the code for this part. After I select A to Z, and then to actually check if it's like correct, I show the logic. But is it supposed to be hidden like this?
This is a good question, by the way, but I'll wait for you guys to answer.
I actually had the same. I had the same question because
Yeah.
like I was trying to do at before method and put all this login page stuff in there, but it wasn't working, so I just gave up. So I get what you're asking, but
that's a good question. Berm, any ideas? I'll answer after you guys all have a go at it.
Well, my thing is, I didn't even have that much, like for the whole for loop and whatnot. I didn't have all that, so I didn't even need to. And my code isn't that much for me to even need to.
Efficient, but like what I'm getting at is like every one of these is kind of like simple in a sense already, but like we just simplified even more for page objects.
Right.
This one kind of has like a lot going on.
Yeah. So okay, instead of answering the first question, Ish, where he says, all right, he put all the logic in that sort test Java class. You see how we put the logic there. Actually, what do you guys think about how we put the check sort A to Z in the base page? How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, like, okay, so I mean, do you understand what the base page is for? Like, explain what it's for.
Supposed to put functions in here that can be used across all the other pages, like clicking, inputting, inputs.
Okay, so if it's like a generic thing,
I only put this here because like maybe like in the cart page or something, like when you add stuff to cart, like maybe you want to check if it's sorted there properly. You know what I'm saying? It's like all around on your cart page, like that's the only reason why I even like put it here. But like, I don't know.
I mean, it could be used there. But like, how do you know that the same way you check the checkout page is the same way you're gonna check your filter in the product page? How do you know it's gonna be the same process?
I mean, I don't know. I assume, like, how do you know these are gonna be the same?
But something like input and click are very basic, but check, sort, A to Z, that's like a pretty specific thing. Like if you like verified that you could use it for both, then maybe you could put it in there. But again, like base page, like let's say it was a bigger website, you have this function here that 500 classes are gonna extend from, and there's absolutely no use of check, sort, A to Z on those. So you're wasting memory on 500 pages so that 2 pages can have non-repetitive code, right? So like if you have 500 pages and only 2 of them need this function, you're better off just putting it in those 2 functions and just repeating yourself than attribute it to 500 pages and overcomplicate it.
Like this?
Yeah.
Right. So this is what I'll come in. Ish and Fa, you guys actually both have valid points, and I see Fa where you were getting at with the base page having the check, sort, A to Z method. But the thing is, there's a reason why we only, depending on the page you visit, it could have a variety of functions. Like we could all agree on that, right? But the reason you make any kind of page abstract, like if you scroll up to your base page, you'll see you made it abstract for a reason. It's because a few logic, some logic persists, like click and input, and we could reasonably, surmise that any page you visit, as long as you pull in the string of that, designated page, like take that click function you created. We have a reasonable, it's a reasonable assumption to make that anytime you visit any page, as long as you pass in that page's XPath, right? It'll reasonably click it, right? For as far as we're concerned with how most web pages work, right? But suppose, all right, now I'll go to the point where you're thinking like, all right, should I put the check? Your question was, should you put check, sort, A to Z, right? Because you had a, it was reasonable for you to say that, right? Because
like the cart page, like you add like items to the cart, and you just want to see if like it's in order or if it's like
right, exactly. So in that case, and I'm glad you brought it up because this actually takes us back to something I kind of glazed over in object-oriented programming. So let's run down the pages. You got the login page. Clearly, there's no sort function there. But then, and let's actually wind it down. We'll go to the product page last because that's where the actual sorting, functionality is there. But we could go down the other list. We put like the overview page, checkout page, none of which. I think the cart page might, but let's assume it doesn't. So that's already 3 pages that don't have the functionality, right? Yeah. So the odds are pretty much like you're not going to find it there, right? But the one time there is the sort function, it comes to the product page, right? So let's go by your initial logic, all right? In case there is a page that has this functionality, check, sort, A to Z, let me just put that in the abstract page. If you go by that logic, why not have 100 more functions off the assumption that any kind of page has any sort of function? You get what I'm saying? Like suppose, I don't know, what can you, like suppose you had a function to test if, like, on Facebook you update profile picture, right?
Yeah.
With your logic, why not just put that in the base page? I mean, we know that web page, that saucedemo.com, that doesn't have any functionality for profile pictures, but it's reasonable. Like, it can have it, so why not? With your logic, why not include that in the base page?
Yeah.
Right? So, clearly, like, it doesn't make sense to, throw the kitchen sink into the base page, right? Because there's so much, there's still a lot of, haziness behind it, right? So, instead of doing that, here's a better option. So I'm really glad you brought this up. So try in the product page, instead of putting in, pull up the product page first. So and let's do it. So expand the left panel. So I mean, minimize the left panel a bit. Don't minimize it. Just like move it to the side a bit. And pull out product page so it's in the middle between base page and sort test. Okay, now just copy paste that entire check sort A to Z logic into the product page.
All right.
Right? And then you could comment that out so it's still there so you don't have to worry.
Just put it in here.
First, yeah, copy paste it. Okay. You can comment that out on the base page. All right, now hit save, control save everything to make sure we're not hitting any errors. You did that, right?
Yeah.
So now I'll expand the sort test.
Like,
Now, what do you think I'm trying to get at?
that I can just
That both answers your first and second question, both Ish's question and yours.
Oh, okay. So like the simplified functions, like the simple ones, I can put in here, but
Right.
a little bit more complex ones I put into the actual like page objects.
Right. No, but forget about that for now. I do want you to make one last remaining change to your sort test.java test A to Z. What do you think that's going to be? Your first question is, which is a very reasonable question. You're saying that login page.input username, input password is so simplistic that we hid the code behind, that method, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think off that same, same idea? What do you think we could do here to reduce the, complexity?
Check sort A to Z.
And go ahead and do it. Let's see type what you mean, and then we'll figure it out.
Like this.
Yeah, but clearly, the way we handle XPath, there's like, something you do have to modify that. But for now, you see where I'm heading at. Now, what do you think you could comment out?
I'd comment out all of this.
Go ahead and do it so we have that visual. Right, so you guys see, disregard that XPath for filter button thing, because that's obviously Fa would, how would Fa fix that?
I would modify it so it's like
He would put in a string.
yeah.
For now, he's accepting a string, right? He's accepting the XPath, but how could he fix that easily?
Put the XPath as a variable.
XPath here.
What do you mean?
I'd put path over here.
Yeah, which you already have saved there, right? The filter button?
And I can get rid of this.
Yeah, go ahead and do it. Let's see it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right, that's the point of the page objects. You got all your XPaths within them. Go ahead, finish your thought process. All right, save, and let's go back to your sort test. So obviously that's accepting the parameter. You can take that out, and that should make it right. So now, but you see what we did there, right?
Yeah.
So step by step, first of all, we went to the base page and realized that not all pages will have the sort functionality, but the product page clearly has like there's a need for that sort functionality, because how you did it in the beginning, where you put public void test A to Z in the actual test case, you could do that. But as we'll come to find out later, why that's a problem. Usually, you do want to, like we said, we kind of keep rehashing the point of cutting the fat where you see it, and there's direct utility to having it done this way, right?
So should I do this or?
No, actually, I mean, in your own time after because we're gonna keep adding to this. you might want to check that this still works. It should. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. But
But
as
I'm
long
saying, is this how like in real life like work like? Is this how it's always supposed to look?
yeah, it should. Like, but a lot of people still end up
No. Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay, it depends. I should say. Like,
This is
so
bad practice if I put like logic out in the open, like for the actual like test class.
right. So for instance, like, suppose you wanted for the check sort A to Z. Suppose for some reason, you wanted to make a more generic sort functionality, right? Like, suppose you wanted to make it a more like a more instead of check sort A to Z. Suppose you wanted to make it more what's the word, like versatile. Like, imagine if you wanted to make a more generic method called check sort that accepts a parameter, and based on the parameter it sorts between A to Z, Z to A, price high to highest to lowest, price lowest to highest. You get what I'm saying? And suppose all that could be dictated by a simple parameter, right? You'd prefer it that way because that, for one, that's less code. Two, it's just it's easier on the eyes, and it's three, it's more readable, right? So usually you if it comes down to it, if you see no other way, which right here there clearly is a way, right? If you see there's a way to make it pretty much just nicer to look at, go that route. But yeah, what you did right here, right now, that's best practice because it's reusable, right? Because now you could pretty much say, suppose you did do how I suggested. Instead of check sort A to Z, you did check sort. You could pretty much handle all the sort functions in one test annotation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, right here, what you did right now is best practice. But did that make sense to everyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions you had, Fa?
Yeah, my Maven's broken. I don't know. Like it was working before, and then
Let's see.
I did restart my MacBook.
No, it's working. It's just failing the build. Try to there could be thing you could just have you could just be having like a compiler error, but this is what is supposed to happen. Like the Maven is working. There's just a build failure. So let's try it again. It could be a typo or something like that.
I don't know what any of this means.
I mean, give me a second.
I ran it on
wait, go back to your terminal.
Oh.
Type
I think
pwd.
that just means you have an error somewhere. Right?
Type.
But like,
Wait, type pwd in the terminal.
Oh.
All right, do you see the error?
Is it because of the location?
Yeah.
I thought it had it out.
Let's let it run. Yep, there you go.
Oh, my second question was.
That's fine. This is the best time to ask questions. I prefer you guys ask questions now.
Okay, so. Yeah, that's probably what's happening. I don't know. Cause like there's sort test obviously, and then my login test.
Yeah.
I commented it out, but like, am I supposed to comment it out, or am I supposed to like put like priority levels and?
Yeah, it's best practice because some people do comment it out, but it's just not good practice. It's better to use. We'll find better solutions, but for now, let's say you want to not test it. It's better you start using parameters. Like we briefly went over it last time, where first of all comment it out. I mean comment it back in, so it's visible. All right, now after the test annotation, put parentheses around it. Yeah, and one of the properties is called enabled. So type enabled.
And false.
equals false. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and hit save, and then you could run it.
But, like, it doesn't show up on the console anymore. It's just over here now.
Yeah, yeah. The only time stuff will show up in the console from now on will be if you system that out something, and that shows up in both.
But where do I see, like, here? I did this on the execute on the console, just to like make sure my logic was working before I did the Maven.
Yeah.
And it says order. That's what I wanted to say. Order is correct. But like, where do I see that here?
Let me see. That should have still showed up. And we'll find better ways of dealing with this. Wait, where did you put order is correct?
Like I basically say, like, if, correct order, then it should say order is correct. Just to let me know, like, it's working.
Do you have an else statement in there? Because it could be possible that the order is not correct, and that's why it's not showing up.
But then it said order is correct, execute.
Oh, never mind. You're right. It's showing up in the console. Anyone else come across this? It should still show up in your terminal. Let's run it one more time, see what happens.
Okay.
It's not showing up. All right, I'll look into this, but it should show up. I'm not sure why. Yeah, disregard that for now. Any other questions?
Same question I had before. Is there a way to cut the fat, like, and the filter page?
Let me see it. Let me
test.
Show me what you have. You sharing your screen?
Yeah, but I don't know why it's taking so long. I don't know. The share button is not working. I click it, it's not. It's just loading.
You wanna describe the problem a little more?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just the filter test. We did a login test, right? We had the login function there. We tested it. Then we have the filter test. But I had to copy and paste the login test code into the filter test because you have to first log in before you filter it.
Yeah.
So is there a way to not have to repeat the code? Because you're repeating the code to log in for the filter test.
There is, and we'll get to it, but for now, that's not a huge issue. But I get what you're saying. Don't focus too much on hyperoptic. Like, do have that in the back of your head. But for now, let's just keep things simple. But, I'm glad you brought that up, but we'll get to that in a bit. But is that your only question?
Yeah. And then within the filter test, I had, test A to Z and then test Z to A, which is different functions. Both of them, had to have the login code in it. Right. So that's also repeating yourself, So. Right.
No, that's actually a lot of times you'll notice sometimes repetition isn't the worst thing. One reason is because you do end up repeating it. But that's like, let's say the login functionality breaks, right? Since you encapsulated the logic to log in that, login page dot input username, password. So how did you do it? You put for every filter test, you put login login page dot input username, input password, and click username?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
At the very least, what do you think you could program in to at least cut that down?
I don't know. I tried a couple of different options. I mean, you could put it in the base page, I guess, but then.
No, don't even think about base page. What could you do in the? You know how we just programmed the entire functionality for file in the product page called, things sort A to Z. What do you think you could do the same in the login page for?
Can you put in a function?
Yeah, you could just put a, if you wanted, you could, since login is such a straightforward thing, it's straightforward, right? You could just put a simple login function that encapsulates the input username, input password, and click login button to at least reduce 3 lines down to 1, right?
Oh, because how do you do that? Because I was trying to figure that out, but I couldn't.
Why don't you just put that login function inside the login page class?
The login page class. Oh, okay. I didn't even consider that.
Right. Yeah. Just so.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Right. But yeah, it could be simple things like that. But usually you want to, once you hit that point, it's a good idea to dial back a little. But, keep having that in the back of your head. But for now, that would be a quick, fire way to at least reduce those lines in the actual test.
Wait. Hold on. So the login stuff is in the login page.
Yeah, input
I'm
username.
just calling on it.
Right. So, I mean, if any time, for instance, for example, let's say you wanted to test, right, it might be better to show you in my screen. So, let's say, hang on. So, I'm talking about this class. So, obviously, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
So, this is fine. Input username, password, login. Let me just take up a test. Login test, right? And this is what we have. Right. So, what if? I mean, I actually put in the reverse order. So, what if I could do this? A lot of times you want to really, the actual test case you want to give a pretty good description for. Like, don't worry about making this excessively long, because a lot of times in the actual test case, that's when it's long. Okay, but let's say I instantiate it like regularly. So, what's stopping me from doing this? Okay. Why can't I do this in your opinion? So this is the test, right? This is the base page or the page object, and these are the test cases I could come up with using just the login page object. So all I did was put in this. Wow, what do you think about this? What's wrong with this? That way I could just do this. What do you think? What do you think about that? Just curious. Any ideas?
Well, if you do that, then you're logging in before the test runs, aren't you?
How? Because remember what it's extending from, right? It's extending from this, And the before method, you know, it sets up all the background information, goes into the URL, right? Don't forget what the hooks class does.
Okay.
Right, so say I'm enabling the login test. At this time, the only thing that'll get skipped is this because we disabled it, but this and this will be enabled.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right, but obviously for every test, it still looks for that hook before method, and we decided to place that in our hooks class. That's the setup, and we have the teardown for the after method, right? So what's wrong with this? And this is a good use case as to why, you know, why we do it this way. Anybody could answer if you know. So
I guess there is nothing wrong with it. Like, why can't you do that?
No, but so there's a reason why you might want to do it this way. So obviously we could keep doing it this way, and the only complaint could have been that it's overly long. Like in this case, it's only, or what I mean by this. So we could do it this way, password, username, right? But what if let's look at the actual website. What if we wanted to test for this, the error message? How do we do it? Right? Or if we wanted to test the user, forgot password, the password error message, how would we do it? It's good to sometimes have that versatility, right? Sometimes I do want that ability to test the error messages, and I can't do that if I just have a generic login function. Like, yeah, in most cases when I'm not testing the error message, yeah, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, okay, for the login page, that's fine. You don't, you keep it the way you had it. But then for the filter page,
okay,
sort page,
actually
that
didn't
one,
update
logging in is kind of redundant, right? You already tested the login stuff in this login test.
Okay,
Script,
I
so
get
you
what
don't
you're
want to
saying. So the filter page, I didn't update my filter page. You're saying, you mean the product page?
No, well, if you go to the filter test.
Filter test, yeah.
I
didn't do it, so obviously it's not.
Oh, you don't have it. Okay, but in mine, and I think I saw in files too, is each, like, the test A to Z and test Z to A, we're rewriting the code to log in.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that, instead of rewriting that, you could just call on it from the login page that you just, the code you just created from the login page.
Right, and that's a very fair point. But what I'm telling you is just like we have a filter test here, the same scenario goes for the login test, right? That's why I get what you're saying, and I'll show you how to deal with that a little after. It's not too important because, yeah, login page you do use a lot to log in. Like, obviously I could keep doing this forever. Yeah, I can keep doing that, right? For now, let's settle on the fact that a lot of times you want to, at least for the login page, it's good to have this ability right here to program this at the very least for each test, just because you might want to pass different parameters to it. And that's what we'll go over today. Like, yeah, you might want to pass standard user to most of them, but look at all these other usernames, right? So if you didn't have this, right, I wouldn't be able to pass in. If I were to hand this off to an extended, like another higher level class, so I could never, and I can't do it. I can actually put it into the hooks page just fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is if I put it in the hooks class, right, and if I take all this functionality out, right. So what I mean by hooks class is I could just put it just like I did before. I could just do this. Look on my right. Right, you won't see any errors. Well, let me import it, and now you won't see any errors, right? And I can do this such that And to quickly answer your question, let's just give it a username. That should be password. So I log in, obviously. And from here on in, yeah, you're right. I could just put my product page logic in here, right? But suppose for one of these test cases, I'm dependent on a new set of test data, right? So let's say I put some logic here. That's dependent on one type of test data. And I put some logic here, and that's dependent on a second. Let's put the actual example. Let's say for the first one, username standard user, and let's say for this, the username I wanted to test is for locked out user, right? Because I'm handling all the login page functionality here, right? I kind of rob myself of doing that in the filter test. So it's a give and take. Like, yeah.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I can leave it such that I'm only dealing with this, and this will work fine. But if let's say even you had like a 49 of these test cases where for none of them did you need for none of them did you need to refer to the login page other than logging in, right? But if for the 50th test case you needed to, so let's even go down to it. So let's say for the 50th test case you needed in this one class to refer to be able to change up the parameters, right, for login. How would you do it? You're gonna have to take this login page from the before method and put it in every single one of them, right? So I get what you're saying, but it's a give and take. Like, yeah, you could rob this of the login page now, but if in the future if there's any instance of you needing different data, which if you guys understand how think of all the statuses you see in a simple bank account, right? A user can have like delinquent test data. They could have a thing like I don't know, minimum balance on one account. There's a lot of different account conditions. So just for that safety net, it's good to just include the login page. So to make a long answer short, it's usually better to leave it here. But again, this is not a rule. Like, it's subject to change. But for now, the basic pattern, you do put in like the login functionality if you're gonna end up using it, and if it's sensitive to change like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else?
No, not right now.
All right. Okay. All right, let me circle back. Okay, I'm gonna exit from hooks, and today we're gonna go over how to handle test data, because this is a good example of it because there's so many of it. Well, at least 4 to go through, right? But you don't want to go through. Well, let's start with the login page. How do we do it before? So we had a separate login test, and one thing you shouldn't get confused of is the page objects and the test cases, right? These are individual.
Yeah, it gets confusing.
Yeah. That's why I get what you're saying from before, and Fa kind of had that same mistake in the beginning, but I think it kind of cleared up now. But the test, you'll find out why I'm calling them tests. It's not just for my sake, but once you start pulling in more dependencies, they're gonna start scanning your files, and they're gonna see which ones are the tests, and the ones you append early will come in handy later because they'll be auto detected. But more on that later. But for now, just make that clear distinction of these are the tests and these are the page objects. Think of these are just like think of them as the actual web pages in the this website, right? As we saw through each of them, there's a checkout page, cart page, all of that, right? Today we're just going to focus on the login page because, for one, this is the only test data we were dependent on. But again, there's a lot more to handle, and we'll see how to handle that. Well, let's go over the worst case scenario of how we could handle that, right? So remember that we did abandon the whole concept of the execute class. Let me see. I think I even took it out of my code. But just for argument's sake, let me pull it back up. So let me create a new execute class, and don't worry about making this yourself. And this was the original way of doing things, although we've already abandoned it. Right? Let me pull it. Let me make it side by side. So how we had it when we abandoned the execute class was we put the username and password here. But again, this is really cumbersome because, I mean, you guys could already kind of see. Yeah, I could have the username and password here, right? But how do I account for all the other usernames? Like, I would literally have to go down the list and put username 1, this, username 2, this. And that's not even good enough because it's not telling you what those usernames refer to. You'd have to kind of spell them out. So that's a problem. So that's a problem, but initially how we could have handled it if we had put the execute class, like suppose I had this login test generic, I could have done this. Right? See, I'm not getting any errors. Like, don't think just because we're extending hooks, this is anything, and the fact that we have test annotations, don't think this is anything but a regular class. It just has a few errors to it, right? I could have done this. If I were using the main class, I could have done this. And I'll let you guys handle this. So, answer this, I mean. So, suppose I wanted to run this function. How could we have done it in a way where, at least in the login class, the execute class, we could have passed in parameters to it, where we're not resigned to this username and password? How could we have done it here, is what I'm saying.
You need a constructor?
Yeah, right, we already instantiated it. So what do we do now?
Put your parameters in the parentheses?
Well, tell me what to type.
Well, in that parentheses, login test, you know, whatever you want, like string.
Right, I see what you're saying. I could have made a constructor here just like any other, right? And I could have put string username, string password and everything, right? I could have done that, yeah, for sure. But what I was trying to get at is I could also done this. So this login test generic, this is just like any other method. Right, you're not going to see any errors here. And, you know, now
can you create an object without a constructor? Like, login test can be made without a constructor? I thought you at least need like a constructor.
So what happens is there's an invisible constructor in any kind of class you create, right? So, yeah, it's just going to be empty. Like, it's just going to assume this. It's just going to, this is what it does if you ever don't mention it. But they all do implicitly create a constructor.
Okay. Yeah. Unless it says abstract, right? Then it'll give you an error.
No. Let me see. Why did that happen to you?
I'm just asking because, like, what's the point of putting abstract if there's nothing stopping you from instantiating it?
Let me kind of formulate what you're asking. So.
Like, if you look at base page, right, you see how it's abstract.
Yeah.
So if I try to create an instance of base page, what would happen? Would it throw an error?
Yeah, because it's abstract. So let's even try it here. So your test cases, let's say base page. Oops. Base page. It'll stop you right here. So you can import it all you want, but there's still an error, right? Cannot instantiate the type.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's typed out to be abstract, so you can't even touch it, right? That's meant. Think of the abstract as it's well, clearly you guys saw there's making things abstract makes it easier in your life, but this is not for the end user to use. This is for you to use. But did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but going back to my original point, yeah, you could have created the constructor, but you could also done this. Like, just because this has an annotation around it doesn't mean you can't do this. Login test generic, and you could have just, passed in a username, password here, right? But because we don't have the execute class, we got to find a workaround for this, right? And luckily, the workaround is a lot more, efficient. I mean, it looks cleaner, and you'll see what I mean by that. Actually, I'll leave the execute class for now. So it's called it's another annotation. So far, you've only had the one annotation here, test, and you had a few parameters to go along with it. For now, it was just enabled, and I think we went over one more. But it's called data provider. And we'll just call it DP method, hence a data provider method. And just like always, you got to pull in the data provider annotation, and just remember, it's another annotation along the whole testng bundle, right? It's in that annotations package, which we've already have right here, annotations. But in this case, we could have done this. And this would have imported all annotations, and all of this would have been redundant afterwards, right? Because this says that you're importing all annotations. But clearly, we only use the after method, before method, and test, so we're not going to do that. We're going to do it one by one. So just let it import by itself. Let me delete that and let it do it itself. Alright, so it's here. Alright, I'm going to change the return type of this, and I'll show you why in a minute. Just for now, just bear with me. It's going to look a little strange. So this is the object it returns, and it's going to give me an error message because it's expecting something to get returned. Now I'm going to put null. Remember, anytime you create a method with any kind of return type, you can just return null for any of them. That says this throws nothing out. And I'm just doing it right now, so I don't see any red, but I'll get back to it later. So let me just first go over what all of this is. So this is actually nothing new. It's just a way of saying I'm going to create an array of arrays, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So to illustrate what I mean by that, let me use our strings. String name equals whatever, just the name, right? So we briefly went over arrays in the start, where you created an integer array, but we shortly we shortly disposed of it because the lists are just so much better. But the original developers of this data provider annotation, they decided to retain the usage of this, and I'll show you why. And this is just to give you a backstory. You don't need to really know this, but more to understand why we want the double array. So if we didn't have the list, we could have done this. And this is not the same thing as this. So far, this is just a single list array. And I always forget the way of doing arrays because I don't use them. Ish, do you remember? I think it was. Oh, there you go. So all this is saying is I want 4 strings in this array, right? So think of a list and just think of it being a lot more redundant. So let me do it. Let me take this out. So this is just to illustrate the string, and let's say Andy Bob Tim. Let's put it at 3. This is already a bit much. Okay, and we'll put this as array of names 1. Let me change that. Okay, so this works much like thing. If I were to do this, right? Strings are just like any other data structure, where the list had size to calculate the full length of it. An array, not just strings. We could have made this an integer if we wanted an array of integers, but for now it's strings. You just put out I, right? Same thing. If I were to hit print, it would just give me, the list of names. So that's a single array, and it's very intuitive, right? But there's also something called a double array. where, and now you'll see this double list, similar to what a double list is here, or not a double list, sorry, a double array. So, and this for double arrays, you don't actually have to mention the lengths of it. And let me just type it out, and I'll explain what I mean by it. And there's a reason why I'm formatting it this way, and I'll let you know. Let's do this with us. Alright, so this looks complicated, but it really isn't, and I'll show you why. So imagine it like this. So now that you have the double array instead of the single array, each of these lines, and I could have formatted it much more confusingly. Like what I mean by that is these could have all been muddled. It would have been still right, but it would have been hard to tell. So all this means is like you have a string arrays here. 0 goes to this, 1, 2. That's for single array. In this case, it's just going to be if you refer to the 0th value, the 0th index, right? After you hit the 0th index, it refers to each of these items here. If I were to put 0, 2, what do you think I would get? So what I mean by that, if I were to put this, what do you think would be printed out?
Tim?
Say again?
Tim?
Who said Tim?
Me.
Okay. Any other guesses?
Oh, Bob.
Right. Let's see what it goes.
Instead of Tim, I say Bob.
Right. It's gonna be Bob because it still follows the convention of you go by 0, right? So imagine this. It might be easier if I put this right here. Oh no, it'll comment it all out. So yeah, so 0, 1, 2, and for Bob it would be 0, 1, 0 and 0, 1, 2. How would I put out Rob?
Uh, 1, 0.
Right. Rob. Okay. And Ish?
Two, 1.
Right. And you rarely use this convention again, but it's good to know for what I'm about to show you. It's just a quick explanation of this. Okay. What if? Yeah, go ahead.
Rob is 0, 0, right?
Say again.
Rob is 0, 0, right?
Rob?
Oh no, Rob is 1, 0.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me just do it to prove it.
What if you put in parameters that, that's outside of...
No, that's I was about to show you that very. So pick a parameter that's outside of it. So let's say in the second
4,
row.
0.
Which parameter will be outside in the second row? Do you think?
1, 3, 1, 2.
Or even let's even cut it close. 1, 1, right? Because it would
1,
go to
1.
1, 1, right? Let's see what happens. So I immediately get an exception, and then it's pretty descriptive here. Array index out of bounds. Like you guys aren't used to exceptions like this because we got kind of comfortable using lists, which handle all that in the background. It wouldn't even let you do this. Actually, it would, but you won't hit an error. It'll kind of reorganize, so you never end up doing it. Regardless, yep, you'll get the error. But this is a very primitive data structure, and it doesn't have a way to handle this. But that's fine because the less complexity you have, the more functionality you get. Like in this case, how we used to have to in other data structures, the problem, oh, never mind, in this case it's a string, so that wouldn't work. But let's say I did want that 1 here, right? So instead of a string, actually let me even do this, just so we're clear. And I'll put the original name here. Call it a generic array. So let me just copy paste the exact same things right here. Okay. Semicolon out, generic array. Oh, let me all right, we'll save that for a bit. Okay, so like I said, there's trade-offs to this. Yeah, there's no kind of background level protection against an index out of bounds exception. That's fine. I mean, that's not fine for, you know, when we have more complex code to run. But what if I didn't know what parameter the user is going to pass. Like say I'm creating something and I want you to use my array, and I'm not sure what you're going to pass to me. That's when primitive data types are handy. I can make them an object, and this is what I could do with them. Right now, if I save, doesn't give me an error because there's no type protection. That's what they call it. Which is why there's a reason I put this object return method out, because a lot of times you might end up passing string values, integers, floating point numbers, all within the scope of your tests, right? But you want to be prepared for that. And in this scenario, it lets you have that type of flexibility. So for instance, if I wanted to print that 1 out, and look, I hit save, I don't see any compiler errors. That's important. So if I wanted to print that 1 out, what would I put in here? It's a question.
If you tried to print the whole array?
No, just the 1. See, I put a 1
Did
here.
you have but you put system.out.print line generic array. Isn't that printing the whole array?
No. I just want to print that exact 1 out. You see that number?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'd be 0, 1.
Yeah. And there you go, 1. Okay, now we could transition into this, right? And give me a second. So this is how this works. Let me find out why this is giving me an error. Oh, I didn't import it. Okay. So this data provider annotation has its own own set of parameters. Like this has enabled. This has something called data provider. I'm sorry, a name. And I'll show you why that name is important. For now, we'll call it generic data. And don't get misled by the red lettering. This is fine. Just look out for red underlining. That means that something's wrong. But for now, this is fine. Okay. So the very basic scenario, what we'll do is we want to start linking the annotation together. For now, we're used to them having their own thing. They're doing their own thing. The overall Maven test command, searches for them. But for now, you've never seen the annotation, the methods that are having annotations interact with each other. But like with the login test, in this case, you want it to interact with data. And let me remove this for a second to show you how we were doing it. Remember, we didn't have this object parameters. We were referring to this, which is not good because again, we have 4 usernames and we don't want to put 4 usernames here, right? It's really muddy. So This is how you link that data provider annotation with the test annotation. All right, just look at that for a second. So this is why I waited a bit before introducing annotations, because a lot of things that you're about to see are just happening in the background. You know how to pass parameters into methods and everything, right? You've done it when we were just using that execute class. But now that we're using parameters, a lot of things happen in the background. The benefit of that is your code becomes a lot cleaner and it's very easy to parse. The kind of con of it is if you don't know what you're doing, and if you ever hit a bug, it's going to be very hard to debug. But luckily you guys went through it like before. But again, this is not something crazy high level, so we'll see how it works. So now we got the link. And this is what we'll pass. So not doing anything new here that we didn't go over here. Let me just show you what I mean. I'm returning a new object, but the only thing I'm not having just yet is the test data. So let's pass in a set of test data. So okay, let me just put it in here first. So I'm just putting that on here. So standard user secret sauce. Okay. So we got the linkage, got the name, right? So, right, which is again why we label this here. The data provider annotation is enough. You got to link it. All right. So that's one requirement. The other requirement is, let's take this out. So if you look here, this test annotation, because you linked it with data provider, it passes in a username and password. You don't see that, you don't see the passage, but it does happen. Like first you link it, right? And then this thing that it's returning, it gets fed into this method thanks to this annotation, right? It's just you won't fully grasp any of it. Trust me, I'm aware. This is something you just gotta kind of compress in your head, as in this is how it works. But let's just see what happens. Let me get into this. Let me disable everything else just to not confuse you guys, and we'll enable this. Again, we don't have to do it, but just to keep it, just to keep a pattern. We'll enable this, disable the rest, such that this is the only thing that gets executed. So this is how this works. Let me go back. Let me go into this folder. I think I have another test enabled. Let me just disable that. Sorry about that. You see. time. No. Let me see what's going on. Give me a second. There's gonna be a better way to make sure this, what was happening to me right now, doesn't happen to you. I noticed when Fa was running his test case, he went through the same issue when he kept executing. But that'll come in a bit. Just give me a second. Where is that? Let me try disabling a few. Oh, you guys see what I did? You got what was happening?
No.
So you remember thing during the example with Fa, right? I mean the example with you. You were asking me the problem with thing putting the login page. Why you have to repeat it?
Mm-hmm.
What I have it on my middle screen.
You
Yeah, I forgot where I put this line, and that could drive you crazy. My bad. So let me save that. All right, now we can run it. All right, I commented all these 12. Let me leave them uncommented, just not to confuse you. All right, so just to review one more time before we hit that. I'm just running this one login test, and I want to pass in parameters that let me use this standard user and secret sauce, where before we had to hold them in a variable, because again, this execute concept doesn't exist anymore. So let's try that one more time. Oh, wait, didn't type in. I don't think I saved it. I gotta debug this. Give me a minute. Let's see what's wrong. Man, this type of stuff is gonna happen constantly. The best way to deal with it is just to go down and see where you messed up. So in this case, it's probably like a test I forgot to uncomment, but I thought I uncommented it before the before hook. But let me see what's going on. The driver is booting up, that's fine. The problem is, why is it that all these other tests are popping up? Nope. Let me just try to. My bad, guys. I know this is taking some time. Just let me do this. Let me just start from scratch really quickly. I'll be really quick. take all these out. So there was some kind of, let me try a new login test. I don't know why that was happening, but I'll take that, and I'll be quick with this. Don't worry. All right. Yeah, sometimes it just happens. Nothing to really do about it. I just have that really quick. Go over what just happened. DP method. Import the data provider. This is giving a thing, null error because we're not returning a statement yet. But let's do that right now. We'll just all this is saying is. Just to connect it one more time, so we're going to connect the two. This is looking for a data provider, hence the parameter. This is no different from how we had enabled as a parameter. We'll say this is true, but not only that, we're going to give it a link to that. How we provide a link to that is as follows. First, we give that data provider a name. We'll call it generic data, and we'll provide the actual reference to it, like so. Data provider equals generic data, right? And now let's get to back to the part where we're returning an object for it. And how we did it, just like before, except in here, what we're gonna do is pass in the username, which is right here, standard user. And the password secret sauce. So as a sanity test, let's just see if we could run this time. Not sure what was going on before. All right, everything looks good. What are we missing? This is just to liven you guys up because everyone went quiet while I was trying to debug that. What's missing here? Anyone? So we got the linkage, we got the data provider. I'm telling you this sends it out, but how is this accepting the argument?
You gotta put in the username in the input username field.
Right, so tell me exactly what you want me to type. So remember, before we had the username and password over here, right? But obviously this is not going to cut it because we're going to have a lot of test cases with different username and passwords. So how do we at least let that first test case accept this? So this is clearly missing a username, right?
Yeah.
So how do you get that username, you think? Remember the background functionality I was telling you about that you're not fully aware of.
So Okay, so it passes that on. So
Where does it get it from?
from the DP method class.
Right.
I mean,
So this throws
DP
it.
method.
This throws it, but how is this accepted?
Oh, you have to put in the string in the parentheses of login test one.
Right. Exactly.
So string
Yeah.
user, yeah.
Right. All right. So for now, let's just let this run and let's see how it works. Okay, so now you saw a direct use case of this passing it in, but now let's not only do that, let's even pass in the password. Let's even go for a click. All right, so let's see it work. So it passed in that password, but obviously you don't see the password. Okay, so let me populate this a bit more, and I'll show you what the actual utility is. Because right now you kind of just switch things around. But let's see what happens if, like before, I know I took it out, the execute class, of how I showed the double array. But let's see, let me put in the rest. Alright, no errors, and let's see what happens if we let that run. Alright. And now it'll go for the performance glitch user. And this has a trouble logging in. They put a timer in the background, the developers, for it. But you can see what just happened here. So without my really having to do anything else, it does that whole iteration process itself. So let me ask you this, and this is not too important, but this is just to help you remember it, because this is I get it. This is hard to remember the use case of it, but remember how we talked about how double arrays work. So this is just for us to kind of understand what the people who developed the data provider, what they were doing here, right? They're saying, and this doesn't have to be only two parameters. This could be any parameters, right? What they're saying is how they developed is they did it like this. Take this dual array that the engineer builds out for you, and this is what they do. They just take the zeroth element, and based on whatever the length of this is, they could iterate through each 1 or 0, 2, right? And they get the length of it, and not only after they do that, they take the entire length of this, they pass it in here, right? And that's how this retrieves the username and password. This is just me kind of guessing into the thought process, because I haven't actually even looked into the actual algorithm. But the reason I'm kind of bringing that up is the only way to really cement this into your head is kind of understand what they do in the background, right? And just like before, instead of secret sauce, we could have passed a 1. And that's the only reason we could do that without hitting any errors is because this is not strongly typed. This is saying this could be any object, right? Before you saw that error when I put the 1 in a string double array is because that is typed, right? But basically in Java, everything is an object, including primitives, right? So in this case, we don't need those integers. We have this. And all it's doing is it's saying for each of the arrays in this second dimension, you just iterate through each of them, right? And if I needed an extra parameter, I would just put an extra one here, right? But that's the case for the data provider class. But that's still not quite the utility of the max utility of it. So another thing it can do is it could also accept this parameter called method, right? And the thing is, you're gonna have to import it. But before that, so let me even not bring this up just yet. So right now I did put it in my login test class, right? But remember, you guys also did the filter test, and let me code it out again because it got. Okay, and it extends hook, so the before and after methods are taken care of. And let's say you did code up your logic here, right? So just like Berm was saying, despite this being a login test, this data provider class, the only thing we really did to it, let me take these comments out. The only thing we did to it is for our test annotation, we simply referenced it, right? This data, we gave this annotation, which is expected. You can't spell it this way because it's wrong, and it'll tell you right away it's wrong. All the annotations come bundled with, the predefined names for the parameters. In this case, it's data provider. So especially, you can't do this either because this is also wrong, right? It's strictly defined as data provider. It's searching for a data provider. What do you think I do? And let me exit this out. Let me exit all this out. And let me put them side by side. All right. So, like Berm was saying before, well, he wasn't quite saying it, but he was getting to the point where login page, I want to share at least the username and password. He was saying, you still log in, you end up logging in, and here I'll still say log in, right? But I want access to this data because at the very least, yeah, you have your login tests, but at the same time, you might want to test all these usernames for when you're testing the filter, right? You never know. You want to try as many permutations as you could, humanly can. How do I make it, or what can you foresee of a way of doing this, or structuring it in a way where I could use the same test data for our filter test?
You just put it in hooks?
Yep. Do you guys hear that? Berm.
Yeah.
All right. So based on what Ish said, Fa, what do you think I do with this? Well, what do you think I do? And tell me exactly what you want me to type.
I don't know.
So what Ish said is you put it in the hooks class. That's what he was getting at. What do you think he was referring to? Berm, you could answer too.
Talking about putting the double array thing in the hooks class?
Which part?
Well, the part you highlighted.
No, this don't disregard that. It's a glitch.
Can you do this data provider thing across classes?
Up to you. I mean, what do you want me to put? We'll see the answer after, but tell me first what you want me to do exactly.
Can't you just copy paste at data provider?
Yeah, that's the answer. But I want you guys to get to it. So why could we copy paste to it?
Because everything extends from there.
Yeah, everything extends from there, right? So I could do this, and there's nothing wrong to it. You see, even when I copy paste, I go by without even an error, right? So even if here I could disable this and I could enable this. There's still something missing. What is it? What is it that's missing? For the filter test.
Calling for the data provider.
Right. So it extends from it, but for it to explicitly use this test data, you still need to refer to it. Because methods can't by themselves interact with each other. Java isn't programmed that way. Like if you're not calling them within the body, there's no other way for a method to know the existence of the other, right? So the data provider annotation, one of the functionalities it does is it gives you this little handy interface where you don't need to mention it inside the body for it to recognize each other, right? So what I mean by that is filter test can't recognize DP method by itself, right? If I were to comment this out, this becomes a useless notion, but because of this little interface right here, it can recognize each other pre-compile time, right? So let me do that here. Right, and that's how you do that, and we'll leave it on one more idea behind it. Let's say for only a certain set of test cases, I want to use a certain set of usernames. And so, for instance, let's say for login test, for whatever reason, I wanted to only use standard user. So I wanted to use that. Username. And for filter test, I only wanted to use problem user. And you never know when this kind of need would arise. Like there's unlimited functionality. But let's see how we would handle that, because otherwise that kind of would defeat the purpose. If I were just generically handing this entire body, then they're all going to use that carte blanche. Like they're not going to make any this doesn't know how to handle if you feed it this double array, it's going to use every single one of them. So another thing this data provider class comes bundled with is it lets you pass this parameter called method, and you got to import it from Java lang reflect. So let's comment that out for a second. So this is only giving you an error again because you're not returning anything. But how you handle this, it's pretty simple. And I'll let you answer. Let me just type it in. I just kind of want you to infer. Alright, so based on what I typed out so far, don't worry about it just yet. What do you think this is doing?
Looking for any methods that have the word login in it.
Right, and which methods have the word login in them?
The ones in the login page.
Tell me specifically what you mean.
Wait, say it again?
So yeah, you're on the right track. Where is it specifically? So if I'm saying m.getName.contains login, which method name is it? Well, on the screen you have your answer, right? I want you to think of which method name it's referring to.
The one that says public void login test.
Well, login test 1, right? Now I just wanted to get you a little more specific, right? So Yeah. So imagine this is why you would structure all your test. That's why you want this kind of pattern to it, right? So let's say I had a bunch of login test scenarios: login, test 2, login test 3, 4. As long as let me login test 2. As long as it contains the name login in it, so basically it scans for this method signature, and as long as it has a login name to it, it's going to execute it. Based on however you talk about it right here. Remember, all the test cases are extending from hooks. So this has this reach of this, has a reach of this. So let's see how we would do it. Let me take this out. So this should only use standard user. That's fine. So what do you think I do and we'll end the lecture here. How do I fill in this body? How do I fill in this body? You got your hint here. Anyone can answer.
Just copy paste that part.
What do you mean, like this?
This whole thing.
You mean like this?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? Well, what do we say was wrong with that?
It's not specifying which one, I guess. I don't know.
Right. No, exactly. You're right. It's if I just throw this whole object out, this handles it such that it iterates over every single one, right?
Yeah.
And we said for login we wanted only the standard username.
Yeah.
So how do we do it? You think?
Give it, what is it called? Like the coordinates or whatever.
This is the one you changed. So what do I change about that?
Return 0100.
No, I mean this is what you want to return because ultimately this is expecting. If you were to put 0100, right? Let's say you put 00, it's going to return the string standard user, but this is expecting a double array. The hint is you just kind of delete from this. So what do you think I delete from it?
Oh, so you just erase the ones you don't want.
Right.
So the last 3.
Yeah. So you just do
And
this.
keep the first line.
Yeah, that's it. Because think of it. This returns a double array. This is still a double array. Remember how this works. Remember how we had it as this is like a 0 and then 01 and then 00 and 01. It's just the same thing. It's just returning a double array. If you were to say return 00, this would return a string called standard user, and that would give you a compile error. All right. How about this? And this I want you guys to complete.
So you're saying that if it does, this is supposed to filter the page, right?
Yeah, this should specifically send out problem username.
So it'll be problem user secret sauce.
Yeah, so basically this is what it sends out.
Oh, no. All right. So we're not filtering.
Right. And this is still giving you an error because basically it's saying it's still expecting an object. And suppose none of these conditions get filled, right? Suppose I'm extending this into something called like a payment test, right? In this case, none of these conditions would get filled. So in that scenario, you always need to throw a null if you're doing a if-else statement. So if I throw a null, it knows to expect a null pointer. So now let's just see how it works. And again, we'll just put a generic username test, a login test in it. Okay, if I were to hit run right now, if I were to hit Maven test, what's gonna be the username it passes into the login page?
Standard user.
Why?
Because it had the login test class has the word login in it.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, let me hit run then. So Berm is saying standard user. So let's see what it passes in. So why did it pass in problem user? And you can see it quit the run, so it didn't, suddenly do the login test.
Because the test is enabled true.
Right. You always got to pay attention to that. You see here in Berm, we disabled it. Yeah. So it's a simple thing like that. You got to just keep in mind. But other than that, you see this. You see the kind of utility behind it. All you had to do is for your test from now on, you just got to specify that it accepts the username and password, and based on this logic, because you program it ahead of time, and let's say you did have that feature, which I'm going to give you guys as a homework. A good idea might be to put this data provider in the hook. So everything you extended from, it abides by your logic without you having to go about programming it. But I know this lecture was long-winded. Don't worry too much about it. Anytime you introduce new features, it's going to be a painful process of learning it. But we're going to keep using this throughout the homework. Keep everything up to date. I'm going to have a system of making sure you put it up in GitHub. But for now, let's end it here, and then we'll continue tomorrow. But we're good to go. Thanks, guys.
So up to now, what should we have done?
No, you don't need to have done any of this, since obviously the video is
not
up.
That, but like in terms of homeworks and stuff. I was supposed to have the Pokemon one done. And it should have up to filter test.
Yeah, done. Yeah. Just have the filter test done. I'm not at the point where I'm taking in the homework just yet, but I do expect everyone to have followed along so far. But that's it. Just make sure your filter tests are ready. I'm going to put in more test cases after tomorrow's lecture. But definitely pick up on the Pokemon homework. If you need help, just reach out to me or Ish. But you should be caught up with that for sure by now.
Yeah, I'm going to try to catch up tonight. All right.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, cool.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Later.